The hammer of Sven Bloodhowl's bolt pistol clicked down on an empty chamber. Cursing his mistake, the Wolf Lord slammed another magazine home and squeezed off a round. The demon's skull shattered, its black blade skittering across the polished black stone. Red eyes blazed in the darkness.
"Morkai's thief!" Bloodhowl roared. "We can't stay here forever!"
As if to prove the point, the gates of the castellum yawned wide, and a ragged mob of mutated crewers surged across the narrow causeway. Heavy bolters cut them down, reapers amongst the chaff. Solvik Whitemane fell and did not rise, a gaping hole above his primary heart.
"What choice do we have?"
snarled Jarn Frostclaw.
"Those emplacements will tear us apart."
Another vessel would have perished already, battered into drifting scrap by the fury of the Black Fleet. But Phalanx was the Fist of Dawn, his first and greatest gift to the Emperor of Mankind. Even decaying and undercrewed, no other vessel in all the heavens was its peer. Even without the escort fleet that was its right, the mighty battle station held its own, but it could not do so forever. Already were a blur of never-ending battle, of brothers lost, and desperate marches through the darkness to outpace pursuit. Had it been days? Weeks? Bloodhowl no longer knew, only that his duty was not yet done. His dozen survivors were only alive because the traitors didn't seem to know the full capabilities of the Blackstone Fortress, and because the vessel itself seemed determined to aid the invaders. Bulkheads had unsealed, automated defenses disengaged without warning. Whatever passed for a machine spirit in the will of eternity wanted them to succeed. Like a frostwolf bloated by disease, it wanted to die. Sensor panels lit up in warning as the main body of Abaddon's fleet broke orbit to engage. Garradon paid those warnings no heed. There would be no surrender, no retreat. If this was to be Phalanx's last battle, then so be it. Thus Garradon held his course, straight into the will of eternity's black maw. The presence of a power interchange, a legacy of the Blackstone service in the Imperial Navy, now subverted by its crew of traitors to channel power to its shields and weapons batteries. Destroy it, and a portion of the will of eternity would go truly dark, perhaps even enough to give the remnants of the Cadian fleet a chance to bring about its destruction. A shift in the light drew Bloodhowl's gaze to the cracked viewport. Blue sparks chased across a golden prow the size of a starfort.
"Phalanx," he laughed. "So Dawn's stiff-necks want to play, do they?"
Bloodhowl leaned around the bulkhead and tossed his last frag grenade into the screaming mass. It exploded with a dull crump, hurling bodies into the gantried abyss.
"If that is our duty,"
Frostclaw scowled, but nodded.
"If that is our duty."
Bloodhowl recognized his own frustration in the Wolfguard's tone. The hour since Firemane's Fang's destruction, and the strike of the boarding torpedo's flame gouted from the will of eternity's flank. It was the tiniest of pinpricks, insignificant against the Blackstone Fortress's vast bulk. But with it, the shields across the lower portside quadrant sputtered and died. From the strategium of Phalanx, Garradon witnessed the moment of weakness. Witnessed and embraced it. The vessel's main batteries, dormant for centuries, roared with a fury to make their long-dead creator proud. The first salvo cracked the will of eternity's gleaming armor. The 11th pounded it to dust. Traitor cruisers drove hard for Phalanx's main batteries, their captains ramming headlong into 52. What made it worse was to fail with the objective in sight. Beyond the castellum, twisted cable clusters betrayed the fortress in the hope of haltering their fury. Some guns fell silent, but not enough. Never enough. Phalanx gnawed at the Blackstone's obdurate hide, battering ever closer to its heart, inch by unforgiving inch. Garradon ignored the wailing klaxon's warning of hull breaches and the worried reports from his strategium crew. This was the Blackstone's hour to die, and Phalanx was to be its executioner. Another salvo, and something inside the will of eternity shattered. A crack split the Blackstone's core, brilliant purple light bleeding across the stars. As the battered Phalanx limped to safety, the rupture spread, swallowing those vessels nearest to it. New shapes flickered into existence around Bloodhowl, their sable power armor edged with flame and molded bone. The newcomers advanced on the castellum, bolters screeching flame. Bloodhowl raised his chainsword high.
"For us, and the Allfather!"
Thus did the fire howlers of Fenris go one last time into glory. Sven Bloodhowl served as a Wolf Lord of the Space Wolves chapter during the era Indomitus. Imbibed with the youthful joy of close-quarters combat, this Jarl of the Vilka Fenrica, despite his pedigree, never truly outgrew the tendencies most emblematic of a Bloodclaw. Lacking in years compared to many of his Wolflord peers, Sven's saga is regardless filled with heroic deeds, many of which emblazoned across his face in deep tattoos. Commanding the Firehowlers' great company, which alike to their Jarl, champion a wild and near unruly behavior, though Sven would be content to spend his tenure forever as a Swiftclaw of the great company, were he not needed as the desired leader of their creed. Succeeding in the place of Finn Forason during the battle against the Death Guard traitor Legion, Sven, as a member of his forebears Wolfguard, witnessed his master's injury at the hands of a demon of Nurgle. Avenging his fallen Jarl with his bare hands, none could deny the prestige of their slain master's bodyguard, nor ignore each and every victory inexorably written under his skin. Finn Forason succumbing to death after weeks of pestilent disease following his battle with the demon, his Wolfguard lit his funeral pyre and elected Sven as his successor. Leading at the spear tip of his great company, more so than any other Jarl of the chapter, such are Sven's heroic deeds that his own body no longer bears skin to record his deeds, his scribes resorting to draft them anew on canvases claimed from his most devastating foes. Gleefully laughing with each swing of his frost axe, Frostclaw, this enormous two-handed axe is regardless wielded by Sven one-handed due to his incredible strength, his offhand clutching the chainsword Firefang, forged from a volcano's ore to which his great company derives their name. Warded from evil spirits by his badge of office, a belt of Russ, forged by the legendary Iron Priest, Steph Blacksoul, Sven bounds into battle using the jump pack Longbound in his mastercrafted suit of Artificer armor. His Wolfguard, hand-picked from the most brutal warriors of the Firehowlers. Atypically for such an elite band of warriors, these Astartes eschew Terminator armor to prevent their mobility from being diminished in favor of jump packs. Sven's second, Olaf Blackstone, similarly legendary among his peers. This ancient space marine would rend his foes apart using lightning claws alongside his kinsmen, Torvind Morkai, Krega Longtooth, Istun Firestorm, and Untia Wolfskull. His assault marines, supported by Swiftclaw outriders known as Bloodhouse Riders, the treads of their assault bikes outflank enemy positions, as the Stormbringers, led by Yori Iceblade, strike from above using flamers, chainswords, and bolters. The second pack, known as the Firestones, supporting their frontline brethren. These junior Astartes under the command of Asgar Rockshard unleash meltergun barrages upon all who remain standing. Sanctioning the use of the legendary relic of his company, the attack bike Bloodhouse Wrath, to conduct the most crucial of attack maneuvers, while Yossi Bloodfang blasts a sway through enemy lines using its multi-melter. Helmard Iceclaw maneuvers to achieve optimal firing solutions. Further supported by two venerable land speeders known as Bloodhouse Ravens, these irreplaceable machines of war, though bearing no sagas of their own, are instead honored with testaments of the crew who survive their armored embrace. Sven's great company, signified by the symbol of their honored landmark of Fenris, the Firebreather volcano, this magma-spewing giant, acts as a bastion to those hardy enough to live beneath its looming stature. Practicing the showmanship of fire-breathing with his return from each campaign, during feasts, Sven's great company often accidentally light one another on fire as their boastful acts of one-upmanship, quote, warm his men up nicely. Regaled of his deeds, fighting during the Demonbane War of 853.M41 and defense of his homeworld during the Siege of Fenris of 999.M41, Sven's last recorded deeds would be made during the same year during Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade. Leading a boarding party of 200 Astartes and elements of the Cadian 13th Regiment to invade the Blackstone Fortress, Will of Eternity, Bloodhouse men, though succeeding in disabling its shields, sacrificed their lives to allow the Imperial Fist's fortress monastery, the Phalanx, to fire upon its position. The last act of the Firebreather, allowing for the destruction of the Will of Eternity. Despite his valiant last stand, his deeds and armor would never be recovered due to the last gambit made by the War Master of Chaos, Abaddon the Despoiler. Hurling the Will of Eternity to collide with the fortress world of Cadia, all within its confines turned to ash as its gargantuan mass collided with the planet and obliterated its form. A fittingly bombastic end to the raucous Wolflord, which while not etched upon parchment nor skin, shall nevertheless resound for all time. Yet to this day, the Firebreathers with no body to reclaim refuse to believe that Sven Bloodhowl is lost, and shall not appoint a new liege in his stead until such evidence has been found.